The autumn rain drummed against the tall windows of Buckingham Palace as William paced nervously in the private study. His hands were clammy and his heart raced like never before. Today was the day he had been dreading for months. The conversation he was about to have would change everything, and there was no turning back. Camilla sat gracefully in the burgundy armchair, her pearls catching the soft lamplight. She appeared calm and composed, but William could see the slight tension in her shoulders. She knew something was coming. The way William had requested this private meeting, the formal tone in his voice when he called her, it all pointed to something serious. "You wanted to speak with me." "William," Camilla said gently, setting down her teacup on the antique side table. Her voice carried the warmth she had always shown him, but there was an underlying current of concern. William stopped pacing and turned to face her. His mouth felt dry, and for a moment no words came. He had rehearsed this conversation 100 times in his mind, but now, standing before Camilla, all his prepared speeches seemed to vanish into thin air. "Yes, I did," he finally managed, his voice already showing signs of strain. "There's something I need to tell you, something I've been carrying for a very long time." Camilla's expression shifted slightly. She leaned forward, giving him her full attention. "What is it, dear? You can tell me anything." The kindness in her voice almost broke William's resolve. This woman had been part of his life for so many years. She had stood by his father through thick and thin, had tried to be a good stepmother to him and Harry, had weathered countless storms with grace and dignity. What he was about to reveal would shatter all of that. William walked to the window, staring out at the gray London sky. The words felt like stones in his throat, heavy and impossible to swallow. "It's about the night Diana died," he said quietly, his back still turned to Camilla. The silence that followed was deafening. William could hear the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner, each second stretching like an eternity. When he finally turned around, Camilla's face had gone pale. "What about that night?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. William's hands began to shake. "I know what really happened. I've known for years, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. But I can't live with this secret anymore." Camilla stood up slowly, her composure beginning to crack. "William, what are you talking about?" "Your mother's death was a tragic accident. The investigations were incomplete," William interrupted, his voice growing stronger despite his trembling hands. "They didn't have all the information. They didn't know what I know." The room felt smaller suddenly, as if the walls were closing in. Camilla took a step toward him, but William held up his hand, stopping her. "That night, before the crash, Diana called me," he continued, his words coming faster now. "She was upset, more upset than I'd ever heard her. She said she had discovered something that would change everything. She said she had proof." "Proof of what?" Camilla's voice was strained now, the careful control she always maintained beginning to slip. William looked directly into her eyes. "Proof that you and Father had been planning to get rid of her long before the divorce was even finalized. That you had people watching her, following her, reporting back to you about every move she made." Camilla's face went from pale to ashen. She sat back down heavily, as if her legs could no longer support her. "That's not... William, you don't understand. Things were complicated. Your mother was making threats." "What kind of threats?" William's voice was sharper now, cutting through her attempted explanation. "She threatened to expose private family matters, things that could have damaged the monarchy irreparably. We had to know what she was planning to do." The admission hung in the air like smoke. William felt his world tilting. Even though he had suspected this truth for years, hearing it confirmed was still a shock. "So you admit it? You were having her followed?" Camilla's hands twisted in her lap. "It was surveillance, yes, but it was protective surveillance. We needed to know if she was going to do something reckless that could hurt the institution, hurt you and Harry." "Protective?" William's voice rose. She felt like a prisoner in her own life. "She told me that night that she couldn't go anywhere without feeling like she was being watched. She was paranoid, scared, and you made her feel that way." "We never intended for anything to happen to her," Camilla said quickly. "The accident was just that, an accident. The paparazzi, the drunk driver. But your surveillance team was there that night, wasn't it?" William's question came out like an accusation. Camilla's silence was answer enough. William felt the room spinning around him. They were following her car. They saw what happened, and they didn't help her. "You don't know what you're talking about," Camilla said, but her voice lacked conviction. "I know more than you think," William replied, his voice now trembling with anger rather than nervousness. "Diana didn't just call me that night to tell me about the surveillance. She told me she had made copies of documents, recordings of phone conversations. She had evidence of everything." Camilla's eyes widened. "That's impossible. We would have known if she had taken anything." "She was smarter than you gave her credit for," William said. "She had been gathering evidence for months. She knew that if anything happened to her, people would assume it was an accident. So she made sure there would be proof." The color drained completely from Camilla's face. "Where are these documents now?" William studied her carefully. "That's what I've been trying to decide. For years I've debated whether to release them, whether to let the world know the truth about what really happened to my mother." Camilla stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "William, you have to understand. Everything we did was to protect the family, to protect the crown. Your mother was going to destroy everything our family has worked to build. By telling the truth?" William challenged. "By telling her version of the truth," Camilla corrected. "A version that would have brought down the monarchy and left you and Harry with nothing." William shook his head. "You still don't get it, do you? She wasn't trying to destroy the monarchy. She was trying to save it from people like you." The words hit Camilla like a physical blow. She staggered slightly, reaching out to steady herself against the mantelpiece. "I've made my decision," William continued, his voice now steady and resolved. "I'm going to release everything. The public deserves to know the truth about what happened to Diana." Camilla turned toward the door, her face a mask of shock and desperation. "I won't let you destroy everything we've worked for," she said quietly. But as she reached for the door handle, she found it wouldn't turn. The door was locked from the outside. Camilla's hand froze on the door handle. She turned it again, more forcefully this time, but the heavy wooden door remained firmly shut. A cold chill ran down her spine as she realized they were trapped inside the study. "William," she said slowly, turning back to face him. "Did you lock this door?" William's expression was just as confused as hers. "No, I didn't. I thought you might want to leave after what I told you. But I would never trap you here." They stared at each other for a moment, the weight of their previous conversation momentarily overshadowed by this new development. Camilla tried the handle again, pushing her shoulder against the door, but it didn't budge. "There must be some explanation," William said, moving toward the door. He examined the lock mechanism carefully. "This is strange. It looks like it's been locked from the outside, but who would do that?" A terrible thought began to form in Camilla's mind. "William, you said Diana had evidence, documents, and recordings."
Have you told anyone else about this conversation we're having today?
"No, no one. I wanted to speak with you first before I decided what to do." William's brow furrowed as he continued to examine the door. "Why would that matter?" "Because," Camilla said quietly, "if someone else knows about those documents, they might not want either of us to leave this room." The implication of her words hit William like a cold wave. "You think someone is trying to silence both of us?" "Think about it," Camilla said, moving away from the door and toward the center of the room. "You have evidence that could bring down the monarchy. I know details about what happened that night that could send people to prison. Together, we're both dangerous to someone." William felt his earlier anger toward Camilla being replaced by a growing sense of unease. "But who would have access to lock us in here?" "This is a private wing of the palace. More people than you might think," Camilla replied grimly. "Security personnel, staff members, other family members. Anyone with the right access codes could have done this." She walked to the window and looked out. "And look," she said, pointing downward. "Do you see any security guards in the courtyard?" "Usually there are at least 2 visible from this window." William joined her at the window. The courtyard below was indeed empty, which was highly unusual for this time of day. "Something's not right here." "William, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me," Camilla said, turning to face him. "Where exactly are Diana's documents? Are they somewhere safe?" William hesitated. Despite their current situation, he still didn't fully trust Camilla. "Why do you need to know that?" "Because if someone has locked us in here, they're probably looking for those documents right now. If they find them and destroy them, your mother's death will never be properly investigated." The logic of her statement was undeniable, but William still felt conflicted. "They're in a safety deposit box. Only I have access to it." "Are you certain about that?" Camilla asked. "Because if someone has been planning this, they might have found a way to access it without you knowing." William's face went pale. That's impossible. The bank would have called me if anyone tried to access it. Not if they had the right connections, the right influence, Camilla said. You're talking about people who had your mother followed for months without her knowing. Do you really think a safety deposit box would stop them? The room suddenly felt much smaller and more oppressive. William walked to the large oak desk and tried to call his private security detail on his mobile phone, but there was no signal. My phone's dead too, Camilla confirmed, checking her own device. This isn't coincidence, William. Someone has jammed the signals in this room. William slumped into the chair behind the desk. I don't understand. If someone wanted to stop me from releasing the documents, why trap you in here too? You were trying to talk me out of it anyway. Camilla was quiet for a long moment. Maybe because I know too much as well. Maybe because the people behind this don't trust that I won't eventually tell the truth about what happened. What do you mean? Camilla walked to the fireplace and stared into the cold ashes. I haven't been completely honest with you, William. About that night, about what I knew. William's attention sharpened. What haven't you told me? The surveillance team that was following your mother. They weren't just watching her. They had orders. What kind of orders? If Diana tried to leave the country with evidence that could damage the family, they were supposed to stop her. William felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. Stop her how? However necessary, Camilla whispered. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of rain intensifying against the windows. William struggled to process what Camilla had just revealed. So when she got in that car that night, she was trying to get to the airport, Camilla finished. She had booked a flight to America under an assumed name. She was going to meet with journalists there and release everything. William's hands clenched into fists, and your people stopped her. I don't know, Camilla said, and for the first time she sounded genuinely anguished. I swear to you, William, I don't know exactly what happened in that tunnel. But I know the surveillance team reported back that the situation had been resolved, and you never questioned what that meant? I was too afraid to ask, Camilla admitted. I told myself it was an accident, that the paparazzi and the drunk driver were responsible. It was easier than facing the alternative. William stood up abruptly, knocking over the chair. You let me believe my mother died because of reckless paparazzi, when all along you suspected she might have been murdered. I didn't know for certain, but you suspected. William's voice was rising again. You suspected and you said nothing. You let the investigations conclude it was an accident when you knew there might be more to it. Camilla turned from the fireplace, tears beginning to form in her eyes. What was I supposed to do? Destroy the monarchy? Destroy your father? Destroy the future you and Harry were supposed to inherit? You were supposed to tell the truth, William shouted. Suddenly they heard footsteps in the hallway outside. Both of them froze, listening intently. The footsteps stopped right outside their door. Someone's out there, Camilla whispered. They heard the sound of keys jingling, and then the lock mechanism began to turn. William and Camilla looked at each other, both realizing that whoever was about to enter might not have their best interests at heart. The door began to open slowly, and a figure appeared in the doorway. It was someone they both recognized, someone they had trusted, but the expression on the person's face was anything but friendly. I'm sorry it had to come to this, the figure said, stepping into the room and closing the door behind them. But you've both become too dangerous to ignore. William and Camilla found themselves facing someone who had been close to the family for years, someone who had access to everything, someone who had been listening to their entire conversation through hidden microphones they hadn't known existed. The real game was just beginning. The figure who entered was Sir Geoffrey Mansfield, the royal family's longtime private secretary and trusted advisor. His normally kind face was now cold and calculating. William and Camilla stared at him in disbelief. Geoffrey? William said, his voice barely above a whisper. What are you doing? Sir Geoffrey closed the door behind him with a soft click and walked calmly to the center of the room. He was carrying a small leather briefcase and appeared completely composed, as if trapping members of the royal family was something he did every day. I've been listening to your conversation, he said matter-of-factly. Every word. The surveillance equipment in this room has been active for quite some time. Camilla's face went white. You've been spying on us? In our own home? Not spying, Sir Geoffrey corrected. Protecting. The same way we protected the institution from Diana all those years ago. William felt a surge of rage. You're the one behind it all, aren't you? You're the one who gave the orders to follow my mother. Sir Geoffrey set his briefcase down on the coffee table and opened it. Inside were several manila folders and what appeared to be recording equipment. I've served this family for 35 years, William. I've seen threats come and go. But Diana was different. She was going to destroy everything we've worked centuries to build. She was trying to tell the truth, William said through gritted teeth. Truth is relative, Sir Geoffrey replied calmly. The truth Diana wanted to tell would have ended the monarchy. Millions of people depend on the stability that the royal family provides. Was her personal vendetta worth destroying all of that? Camilla found her voice. Geoffrey, what exactly are you planning to do with us? Sir Geoffrey pulled out one of the folders and opened it. That depends entirely on both of you. William, you mentioned documents that Diana left behind. I need to know where they are. I'm not telling you anything, William said defiantly. I was hoping you wouldn't say that. Sir Geoffrey sighed. He pulled out a tablet device and showed them the screen. It displayed surveillance footage from inside a bank vault. Is this the safety deposit box you were referring to? William's heart sank as he recognized the vault where he had stored Diana's evidence. On the screen, he could see several men in suits examining the contents of his box. How did you access the box? It wasn't difficult. A few forged documents, some official letterhead, and a story about national security concerns. Banks are quite cooperative when they believe they're helping protect the crown. William lunged forward, but Sir Geoffrey held up his hand. I wouldn't do that if I were you. My associates are currently examining every document your mother left behind. They're quite thorough in their work. You can't just steal evidence, Camilla said. Evidence of what? Sir Geoffrey asked with a smile. By the time my team is finished, there won't be any evidence left to steal. William felt like the walls were closing in around him. You're destroying everything? Not destroying, correcting. Your mother was a troubled woman who made many accusations she couldn't prove. History will remember her as a beloved princess who died tragically young. That's much better than remembering her as a paranoid conspiracy theorist, don't you think? She wasn't paranoid, William said. She was right about everything. Sir Geoffrey pulled out another folder. Actually, she was wrong about quite a few things. For instance, she believed the surveillance team was working for your father and Camilla, but they were working for me. This revelation shocked both William and Camilla. They looked at each other, realizing that neither of them had known the full scope of what had been happening. You acted independently, Camilla asked. I acted to preserve the institution, Sir Geoffrey corrected. Your father was too emotional, too conflicted to make the hard decisions. Someone had to take responsibility for protecting the family's future. William's mind was racing. The surveillance team that night, when Diana was trying to get to the airport, they were following your orders? They were following orders to prevent a catastrophe, Sir Geoffrey said. Diana had evidence that could have brought down the government, not just the royal family. Did you know she had recordings of phone conversations between cabinet ministers, documents showing financial irregularities in state functions? She wasn't just going after your father, she was going after the entire establishment. So you had her killed, William said flatly. Sir Geoffrey's expression didn't change. I had a problem solved. The drunk driver was already drinking that night. We simply made sure he would be in the right place at the right time. The paparazzi were already chasing her. We just gave them better information about where she would be. Everything that happened was believable because it was based on things that were already happening. The casual way he described orchestrating Diana's death made William feel physically sick. You murdered my mother and made it look like an accident. I prevented a revolution, Sir Geoffrey said. Do you have any idea what would have happened if Diana had released those documents? The government would have fallen. The monarchy would have been abolished. Everything your ancestors built over 1,000 years would have been destroyed in a single day. Camilla had been listening in horror. Geoffrey, we never asked you to do any of this. If we had known, you would have tried to stop me, Sir Geoffrey interrupted. That's why I couldn't tell you. Someone had to be willing to make the hard choices. William was struggling to control his anger. And now? What are you going to do with us? Sir Geoffrey walked to the window and looked out at the gray sky. That depends on what you're both willing to do going forward. William, you can continue to be a future king who honors his mother's memory by serving the people, or you can be a bitter prince who destroys everything she would have wanted you to inherit. You don't get to tell me what my mother would have wanted, William said. Actually, I do. Sir Geoffrey replied, turning back to face them. He pulled out a small recording device from his briefcase. Because I have recordings of every conversation she had in the weeks before she died, including several where she expressed concerns about the damage her revelations might do to you and Harry. He pressed play, and Diana's voice filled the room. It was eerie hearing her speak, knowing she'd been dead for so many years. I don't want to hurt my boys, Diana's voice said through the speaker. They didn't ask for any of this, but people need to know the truth about what this family is really like. Sir Geoffrey stopped the recording. She was conflicted, William. Part of her wanted revenge, but part of her wanted to protect you. I helped her make the choice that would protect you. By killing her, William shouted. By ensuring that you would have a future to inherit, Sir Geoffrey said calmly. If she had lived and released those documents, you would be living as ordinary citizens today. No titles, no wealth, no platform to help people. Is that really what you would have preferred? William found himself unable to answer immediately. The question forced him to confront something he had never really considered, what his life would have been like if the monarchy had fallen. I can see you're thinking about it, Sir Geoffrey observed. Good, because that's exactly what Diana was thinking about in her final weeks. She realized that destroying the institution would hurt her children more than it would hurt the people who had wronged her. Camilla spoke up quietly. Geoffrey, even if all of that is true, what you did was murder. There has to be consequences. Sir Geoffrey smiled sadly. There have been consequences, Camilla. I've lived with what I did for over 25 years. I've watched William and Harry grow up without their mother. I've seen the pain in their eyes every time someone mentions her name. Do you think I feel nothing about that? Then why did you do it? William asked. Because someone had to, Sir Geoffrey replied, and because I was the only one willing to sacrifice my own soul to save the institution that millions of people depend on. He walked back to his briefcase and pulled out a document. Now I need both of you to sign this. William looked at the paper. It was an official statement declaring that any rumors about Diana's death being anything other than an accident were false and harmful to her memory. I'm not signing that, William said immediately. Then I'm afraid our conversation is going to take a very different turn, Sir Geoffrey said, his tone becoming more threatening. The threat in Sir Geoffrey's voice was unmistakable. William and Camilla exchanged worried glances as the elderly man reached into his briefcase again, this time pulling out a small silver device that neither of them recognized. What is that? Camilla asked nervously. Insurance, Sir Geoffrey replied. This room has been sealed from the outside. The ventilation system has been temporarily shut off. This device can release a gas that will make both of you very sleepy, permanently sleepy if necessary. William felt his blood run cold. You're threatening to kill us? I'm presenting you with options, Sir Geoffrey corrected. Option 1. You sign the document acknowledging that any conspiracy theories about Diana's death are harmful lies. You return to your normal lives and never speak of this again. Option 2. You become victims of a tragic gas leak that unfortunately occurs while you're having a private conversation. People will ask questions if we both die, Camilla pointed out. Will they? Sir Geoffrey asked. A stepmother and stepson having a difficult conversation about family matters? Everyone knows there's been tension between you two over the years. It would be sad but believable that you were so absorbed in your argument that you didn't notice the gas leak until it was too late. William realized that Sir Geoffrey had thought this through completely. You've been planning this for a long time, haven't you? I've been planning for every possibility since the day Diana died, Sir Geoffrey admitted. I knew that eventually someone might start asking the right questions. I've had contingency plans in place for over 2 decades. What about Harry? William asked. He's going to want answers too. Harry doesn't know anything, Sir Geoffrey said. And as long as you both make the right choice today, he never will. He can live his life believing his mother died in a tragic accident just like the rest of the world. Camilla was studying Sir Geoffrey's face carefully. You're not going to let us leave this room alive either way, are you? Sir Geoffrey paused for a moment before answering. That depends on how convincing you can be when you sign that document. I need to believe that you'll never speak about this again. And if you don't believe us, then I'll have to eliminate the risk you represent. The casual way he discussed murder made it clear that Sir Geoffrey had crossed lines long ago that most people never even approached. William realized they were dealing with someone who had spent decades justifying increasingly terrible acts. Geoffrey, William said, trying a different approach. You said you've been carrying this guilt for 25 years. Don't you want it to end? Don't you want to finally tell the truth? The truth is a luxury I can't afford, Sir Geoffrey replied. Too many people depend on the stability of the institution I've protected. But the institution is built on lies now, William argued. How can that be stable in the long run? All institutions are built on necessary lies, Sir Geoffrey said. The myth of royal divine right, the fiction that democracy actually represents the will of the people, the belief that justice is blind. These are all useful lies that keep society functioning. Camilla shook her head. That's not what the monarchy is supposed to be about. We're supposed to serve the people, not deceive them. Serving the people means giving them what they need, not what they think they want, Sir Geoffrey countered. They need stability, tradition, and continuity. They don't need to know how those things are preserved. William was growing frustrated with Sir Geoffrey's twisted logic. My mother's death wasn't about preserving stability. It was about covering up corruption and abuse of power. Your mother's death was about preventing the complete collapse of the constitutional monarchy, Sir Geoffrey said firmly. Everything else was secondary. Secondary? William's voice rose. She was a human being. She was my mother. She was a threat to the welfare of 65 million British citizens, Sir Geoffrey replied coldly. I made a calculation about the greater good. William realized that arguing about morality wasn't going to work with someone who had spent decades rationalizing murder. He needed to find another approach. Let me ask you something, William said. What happens when I become king? Do you think I'm going to be able to rule effectively knowing that my entire reign is built on my mother's murder? Sir Geoffrey considered this question seriously. You'll learn to compartmentalize just like every other monarch has had to do. The crown comes with difficult knowledge that must be carried privately. And if I can't, if I crack under the pressure and tell the truth anyway, then you'll abdicate and Harry will take the throne. And if Harry can't handle it either, then we'll move to the next in line. The institution is bigger than any individual. Camilla had been listening to this exchange with growing alarm. Geoffrey, you're talking about manipulating and potentially murdering multiple members of the royal family. At what point do you recognize that you've become the very threat you claim to be protecting against? Sir Geoffrey turned to look at her with what might have been sadness. I crossed that line the night Diana died, Camilla. There's no going back from that. I can only move forward and continue to protect what I've already sacrificed everything to preserve. William saw an opening. But what if there was another way? What if we could find a solution that protects the institution without requiring more deaths? I'm listening, Sir Geoffrey said cautiously. The documents Diana left behind, they're not just about the royal family, right? You said she had evidence of government corruption too. Yes, that's correct. Then let's use that, William suggested. Instead of destroying everything, we release only the parts about government corruption. We expose the politicians and bureaucrats who were involved, but we frame it as Diana being a whistleblower who was trying to clean up the system. Sir Geoffrey's expression showed interest for the first time. Go on. We turned Diana into a hero who died because she was trying to expose corruption in government. The royal family becomes the victims of the same corrupt system she was fighting against. Instead of bringing down the monarchy, the revelations strengthen it by showing that even the royal family was being manipulated by corrupt officials. Camilla caught on to William's strategy. It would explain why Diana felt like she was being watched and followed. It wasn't the royal family who was persecuting her. It was corrupt government officials who were afraid she would expose them. And those officials, William continued, arranged her death to silence her. The royal family had no idea what was happening. Sir Geoffrey was quiet for a long moment, clearly considering the proposal. It's an interesting idea, he admitted, but it would require framing several high-ranking government officials for murder. Officials who are already dead or retired, William pointed out. People who can't defend themselves. And it would require me to take responsibility for my actions, Sir Geoffrey said slowly. Yes, it would. But not as someone who was protecting the royal family, as someone who was working for corrupt government officials and deceiving the royal family about his true loyalties. The room fell silent as Sir Geoffrey processed this proposal. William and Camilla waited anxiously to see if their desperate plan had any chance of working. Finally, Sir Geoffrey spoke. You're asking me to rewrite history in a way that protects the monarchy but destroys my own reputation. We're asking you to find a way to tell a version of the truth that serves the greater good you claim to care about," William replied. Sir Geoffrey walked to the window again, staring out at the darkening sky. When he turned back to face them, his expression was unreadable. "There's something else you both need to know before I make my decision," he said quietly. Sir Geoffrey's words hung in the air like a sword about to fall. William and Camilla both held their breath, wondering what other secrets this man had been carrying for all these years. "Diana wasn't the only one," Sir Geoffrey said quietly, his voice carrying a weight that seemed to age him before their eyes. "She wasn't the first person I had to deal with, to protect the institution." William felt the blood drain from his face. "What do you mean?" Sir Geoffrey returned to his briefcase and pulled out another folder, this one much thicker than the others. "Over the past 40 years, there have been 7 individuals who posed significant threats to the stability of the monarchy. Diana was just the most high-profile case." Camilla's hand went to her throat. 7 people? A photographer who captured compromising images in 1983. A journalist who was investigating financial irregularities in 1987. A former staff member who was planning to write a tell-all book in 1994. Diana in 1997. A historian who discovered certain documents in 2003. A documentary filmmaker in 2009, and most recently, a computer expert who was hired to digitize old records and found some things he shouldn't have seen. The casual way Sir Geoffrey listed these deaths was chilling. William realized they were sitting across from a serial killer who had been operating within the royal household for decades. "All of these people died in accidents," Sir Geoffrey continued. "Car crashes, heart attacks, falls downstairs, drowning incidents. All very believable, all thoroughly investigated, all ruled accidental deaths." "You're a monster," William whispered. "I'm a guardian," Sir Geoffrey corrected. "Every institution needs someone willing to do the unthinkable to preserve what matters most. The Roman Empire had the Praetorian Guard, the Catholic Church had the Inquisition, the British monarchy has me." William stood up abruptly, his chair falling backward. "Those organizations you're comparing yourself to, they all fell eventually. Maybe because they were built on the same kind of corruption and murder that you represent." "Perhaps," Sir Geoffrey acknowledged. "But they lasted for centuries before they fell. That's what I'm trying to give the monarchy. Time. Time to evolve. Time to adapt. Time to become strong enough to survive without guardians like me." Camilla had been studying the folder Sir Geoffrey had opened. "Geoffrey, that computer expert you mentioned, when did you say he died?" 6 months ago. "Why?" "Because I remember that death. It was in the news. A young man named Thomas Bradley. He fell off a hiking trail in Scotland." "That's correct." "But Geoffrey," Camilla continued, her voice growing stronger, "Thomas Bradley didn't work for the royal household. He worked for a private archival company that was hired to digitize historical documents for the National Archives." Sir Geoffrey's expression didn't change, but William noticed his hand move slightly closer to the silver device on the table. "Your point?" Sir Geoffrey asked. "My point is that you're lying about at least some of these deaths," Camilla said boldly, "which makes me wonder if you're lying about all of them." William caught on to what Camilla was suggesting. "You're not actually a guardian protecting the monarchy, are you? You're something else entirely." Sir Geoffrey smiled, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "Very good. I was wondering when one of you would figure that out." "Then what are you?" William demanded. "I'm someone who has spent 40 years building a very lucrative business," Sir Geoffrey replied. "The monarchy was just my most prestigious client." The pieces began falling into place in William's mind. "You're not protecting the institution, you're protecting yourself. The corruption Diana discovered, you were part of it." "I was leading it," Sir Geoffrey corrected proudly. "Do you have any idea how much money flows through royal accounts? How many contracts are awarded based on royal recommendations? How many business deals are influenced by a word from the right person at the right time?" Camilla's face showed her disgust. "You've been using your position to enrich yourself. I've been using my position to create a network of influence that spans governments, corporations, and royal houses across Europe," Sir Geoffrey said. The monarchy was never the target. It was the tool. And Diana found out, William said. Diana stumbled onto a small piece of it, Sir Geoffrey confirmed, but she was smart enough to realize that what she had found was just the tip of an iceberg. She started digging deeper, asking questions, following money trails. So you killed her to protect your criminal enterprise. I killed her to protect a 40-year investment, Sir Geoffrey said matter-of-factly. But I also realized that her death would send a message to anyone else who might be tempted to investigate too deeply. William felt sick. All these years I thought my mother died because of family politics, but she really died because she discovered you were stealing from the crown. Among other things, Sir Geoffrey said, she also discovered that I had been selling information about royal schedules to foreign intelligence services, and that I had been arranging for certain government contracts to go to companies that paid me substantial consulting fees. Treason, Camilla said flatly. You're guilty of treason. I'm guilty of capitalism, Sir Geoffrey corrected. I identified valuable assets, access, information, influence, and I monetized them. It's what any good businessman would do. William was struggling to process the full scope of what Sir Geoffrey was revealing. How many people know about this? More than you might think, fewer than you might fear, Sir Geoffrey replied. I have associates in various government departments, business partners in multiple countries, and clients who have been paying for my services for decades. And they're all just going to let you murder members of the royal family? Sir Geoffrey laughed. William, they don't care what happens to you. You're not their client. I am. They pay me for information and access. As long as I continue to provide those things, they're perfectly happy to let me handle any inconvenient complications that arise. The full horror of the situation was becoming clear. William and Camilla weren't just trapped by one corrupt official. They were trapped by an entire network of corruption that stretched far beyond the palace walls. But here's the interesting thing, Sir Geoffrey continued. My business model is about to change dramatically. What do you mean? Camilla asked. Well, thanks to your conversation today, I now know that Diana's evidence still exists. Evidence that could not only expose my activities, but also implicate dozens of my associates and clients. William's heart sank as he realized where this was going. So instead of just eliminating you two to protect my secrets, Sir Geoffrey said, I'm going to eliminate you two and then use Diana's evidence to blackmail everyone she gathered information about. Instead of selling access and information, I'll be selling silence. Sir Geoffrey picked up the silver device. The gas I mentioned earlier? It's not just going to make you sleepy. It's going to make you both very cooperative. You're going to help me understand exactly what evidence exists and where it's hidden. Then you're going to help me contact everyone who might be implicated and negotiate the terms of their silence. And after that? William asked, though he already knew the answer. After that, you'll have outlived your usefulness, Sir Geoffrey said, pressing a button on the device. The room began to fill with a sweet-smelling gas that made William's head feel foggy almost immediately. As his vision started to blur, he saw Camilla collapse into her chair, her eyes closing. Just before he lost consciousness, William heard Sir Geoffrey speaking into a radio. Phase 1 complete, begin Phase 2. William's consciousness returned slowly, like swimming up from the bottom of a deep, dark pool. His head throbbed and his mouth felt like cotton. As his vision cleared, he realized he was no longer in the palace study. Instead, he was in what appeared to be a basement room with concrete walls and no windows. Camilla was sitting in a chair across from him, also beginning to wake up. She looked pale and disoriented, blinking rapidly as she tried to focus on her surroundings. Where are we? She mumbled, her voice slurred from the effects of the gas. Before William could answer, a door opened and Sir Geoffrey entered, followed by two men in dark suits whom William didn't recognize. Sir Geoffrey looked refreshed and alert, clearly unaffected by the gas that had incapacitated his prisoners. Good. You're both awake, Sir Geoffrey said cheerfully. I was beginning to worry I had miscalculated the dosage. William tried to stand but found that his hands and feet were bound to the chair with plastic zip ties. A quick glance at Camilla confirmed she was similarly restrained. Geoffrey, this has gone far enough, Camilla said, her voice stronger now. Whatever you think you're going to accomplish, it's not going to work. Actually, it's working perfectly so far, Sir Geoffrey replied. He nodded to one of the men, who brought over a laptop computer and set it on a small table in front of William and Camilla. The screen showed surveillance footage from multiple locations. William recognized his own apartment, Harry's house, and several other residences of extended family members. "I wanted you both to understand the scope of the situation before we begin our negotiations," Sir Geoffrey said. "Everyone you care about is currently being monitored. If anything happens to me, or if you fail to cooperate fully, my associates have instructions to ensure that your family members meet with unfortunate accidents." William's blood ran cold. "You're threatening Harry? And the children?" "I'm ensuring your cooperation," Sir Geoffrey corrected. "The safety of your family depends entirely on how helpful you choose to be." One of the men in suits stepped forward and placed a tablet device on the table. "We've already retrieved the contents of the safety deposit box," he said in a crisp, professional voice. "But we need you to verify that we have everything and explain the significance of certain documents." William looked at the tablet screen, which showed photographs of all the documents and recordings his mother had left behind. His heart sank as he realized that Diana's evidence was now in the hands of the very people she had tried to expose. "I'm not helping you," William said firmly. Sir Geoffrey sighed and pulled out his phone. "James," he said into the device, "please send a demonstration to Prince Harry's residence." Within seconds, the laptop screen changed to show live footage from inside Harry's house. William watched in horror as men in masks entered the building, moving through the rooms with military precision. "Stop," William shouted. "I'll cooperate. Just leave them alone." Sir Geoffrey held up his hand and the masked figures on the screen immediately stopped and withdrew from the house. "Excellent. I knew you'd see reason." Camilla was staring at the screen in shock. "Geoffrey, how long have you been planning this? How many people are involved in your organization?" "Planning this specific operation?" "About 6 months, ever since I learned that William had been asking questions about his mother's death," Sir Geoffrey replied. "But building the network that makes this possible? That's been a 40-year project." He gestured to the two men in suits. "These gentlemen represent just a small fraction of my associates. I have people in intelligence services, law enforcement, military units, and private security companies across 3 continents. When you've been selling information and access for as long as I have, you develop quite an extensive contact list." William forced himself to focus on the tablet, trying to understand what Sir Geoffrey needed from him. "What exactly do you want me to explain about these documents?" "Let's start with this recording," Sir Geoffrey said, pointing to an audio file on the screen. "Your mother labeled it Insurance Policy Number 3. What was she referring to?" William recognized the file. "It's a recording of a phone conversation between several government ministers discussing how to manipulate media coverage of royal events to distract from a financial scandal." "Which ministers? And which scandal?" "I'm not telling you that until you guarantee the safety of my family." Sir Geoffrey smiled. "William, your family's safety isn't something I can guarantee. It's something you have to earn by being cooperative. The more helpful you are, the safer they remain." It was a classic hostage situation, and William realized that Sir Geoffrey had probably used this same technique many times before. The man was clearly experienced at manipulating people through threats to their loved ones. "There's something else you should know," Camilla said suddenly. "Something that might change your calculations, Geoffrey." Sir Geoffrey raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" "Before we were locked in the study today, I sent a message to someone. A journalist I've known for years. I told her to start investigating if anything happened to me." Sir Geoffrey's expression didn't change, but William noticed that the two men in suits exchanged glances. "What kind of message?" Sir Geoffrey asked. "I told her to look into the deaths of 7 people over the past 40 years. I gave her their names and dates of death. I also told her to investigate any connections between those deaths and certain government contracts that were awarded around the same time periods." William stared at Camilla in amazement. He hadn't known she was aware of Sir Geoffrey's pattern of murders, much less that she had taken precautions. "You're bluffing," Sir Geoffrey said, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. "Am I?" Camilla asked. "The message was sent from my private account to Sarah Morrison at The Guardian. She's probably already started making phone calls." Sir Geoffrey pulled out his phone and made a quick call. "I need you to monitor all communications from Sarah Morrison at The Guardian," he said tersely, "and find out if she's made any unusual inquiries in the past few hours." While he was on the phone, Camilla leaned slightly toward William. "Play along," she whispered almost inaudibly. William realized that Camilla was buying them time, possibly creating doubt in Sir Geoffrey's mind about whether his plan was still viable. When Sir Geoffrey finished his call, his expression was troubled. "My people are checking on your journalist friend. But even if you did send such a message, it doesn't change the immediate situation. You're both still going to help me understand Diana's evidence." "Actually, it changes everything," Camilla said boldly, "because now you can't afford to kill us. If William and I disappear right after Sarah Morrison starts investigating those deaths, it's going to look very suspicious." "She could have an accident too," Sir Geoffrey said, but William noticed that he seemed less certain than before. "Could she? How many accidents can happen before people start noticing a pattern? You said yourself that your business model depends on staying below the radar." Sir Geoffrey was quiet for a moment, clearly reconsidering his options. Finally, he spoke to the two men in suits. "Contact the cleanup team. I want Sarah Morrison's communications monitored and her current location tracked." As the men stepped away to make their calls, Sir Geoffrey turned back to William and Camilla. "You're both very clever. But you're forgetting something important." "What's that?" William asked. "I don't actually need you alive to get what I want from Diana's evidence. I just need you alive long enough to explain what I'm looking at. After that..." He shrugged. William felt his hope beginning to fade again. Even if Camilla had bought them some time, they were still trapped with a man who had spent decades killing people to protect his secrets. But then something unexpected happened. Sir Geoffrey's phone rang, and when he answered it, his expression changed dramatically. "What do you mean they're gone?" he said into the phone. "That's impossible. We had teams watching all of them." He listened for a moment longer, then hung up and stared at William and Camilla with a mixture of anger and confusion. "It seems your family members have all mysteriously disappeared," he said slowly, "along with their security details. Someone warned them." William and Camilla looked at each other, both realizing that someone else was playing this game, someone Sir Geoffrey hadn't anticipated.